Spotlight is a production of CTNY, the Catholic Television Network of Youngstown. It seeks to spotlight people, places, and events from around the Diocese of Youngstown that promote the new gospel of joy called for by Pope Francis. Your program host is Father James Corda.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Spotlight. I'm Father Jim Corda. Today we're going to talk about Youngstown State University, and joining me is President JimTressel. Welcome to our show today.
Thank you, Father. It's great to be with you.
I think it might be nice for the folks that are with us to give them kind of a little background of yourself, maybe a little biographical, historical background.
Well, I grew up in Berea, Ohio for the most part. Now, I was born up in Lake County when my father was the head football coach at Menor High School and taught at Menor High School. Moved to Massillon High School when I was 3, and I don't remember much about either place, quite honestly. And then when I was 5, we moved to Berea, Ohio, where he became the head football coach and athletic director and on the faculty at Baldwin Wallace College, and virtually grew up kindergarten through college within one block of my home, and then started my professional career and spent 4 years at the University of Akron and 2 years down at Miami of Ohio and 2 years at Syracuse University, 3 years at Ohio State as an assistant coach, and then got to come here to the Valley in 1986 and spent 15 glorious years here, and then 10 over in Columbus back with the Buckeyes, and 1 with the Indianapolis Colts, and the last 2 years prior to coming home again at the University of Akron as a vice president. So it sounds like a long time, but it's been like a blur.
Well, I would imagine along the way there are those people that have been kind of examples for you, and you first mentioned your dad. I'm sure that in his role, because of your profession, you look to him as an example. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, it really would. People have asked me a lot over the course of time, because my father and I were in the same profession, and what did I learn most from him? And I think they were thinking in terms specifically of what I learned for coaching, but really what I learned from him about being a person and being a coach were one and the same. And he used to live by a phrase, a quote that I attribute to him. I'm sure he didn't make it up, but I heard it from him, so in my mind it's his quote. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's the way he taught. I could see that in the way he worked with his young people. That's the way he worked with us as children. And that was always what I wanted to try to see if I could embody and mimic from what he did. And I think the other person in my young life, outside of my mom, was the greatest servant leader I've ever seen in the history of the world. We could have another show about her. But my high school football coach, Tom Madsey, was the one that sent me to a Fellowship of Christian Athletes camp. And he knew I liked sports, and he knew I did well in school and all that good stuff, but he thought that would maybe be a good thing for me. And really, that's probably where I really began to have a spiritual journey that, other than just being an obedient youngster and going to church when I was told and whatnot, my passion for my faith began after my high school coach sent me to a Fellowship of Christian Athletes camp, and that probably shaped my life more than any single thing.
How do you see that whole sense of Christianity working in hand, in tandem with, like, the sports field? Like, how do you express that to those that you serve?
I think the best way any of us can express something we feel strongly about, something we believe in deeply, is for it to be seen in us. And sometimes when we try to beat people over the head and tell them what we think is the proper doctrine or what we think is the way things should be done, and then don't appear that way, our teaching goes on deaf ears. So I think it begins with trying to be what you believe in, and which is hard. No one ever said that it was a simple, following Christ is a simple path. But I've always felt that, what they see in me, or what I try to show from a standpoint of caring about others and being Christ-like, and that to me is the best way to express. And so whether it's in sport, or it's in being a teacher, or it's in being a parent, or any vocation you're in, I think it's the way you live is your greatest ability to witness. And then what happens a lot, I know happened a lot with me as a coach, was student athletes would come to me and say, "Hey, Coach, I noticed that your faith is really important to you, and I noticed that you treat people well, and you've always treated me well, and I'm fourth string, and I'm not doing you any good. What is it that, why are you so happy? Why are you at peace? Why do you treat people so nice? Because I want to be that way." And I said, well, and that's when you have your opportunity to talk about, your scriptural study, or your discipleship that you've been through, or your fellowship that you are a part of, or your church family, or, that's the way I've always tried to approach it.
We've got about 2 or 3 minutes left in our first segment. Isn't that true that kind of drawing people to the faith is more of an attraction instead of a coercion? I firmly believe that people are really loved into the faith.
Yes.
And you're right, by showing the example, by your thoughts, your words, your deeds, that really does speak louder than any kind of doctrine that's on the page or paper. And how does that work for you, very briefly, in the kind of hills and valleys in life? Because we all experience those ups and downs. How important is faith in those low times as well as high times?
In my mind, and again, I've had a long life now, in my experience, I've had a whole bunch of highs and some lows. I really believe that if it weren't for my faith, for my belief that Christ is in me, that God has always got a hold of my right hand, if it weren't for that, I think it would have been difficult to go through some things that maybe someone from the outside thought was, life-ending. If we ever lost to Michigan, they think life as we know it has ended, or if you lose your job or whatever. But it was definitely my faith that gave me the strength and the just the confidence that, hey, made some mistakes. Ball didn't bounce the right way today. That probably wasn't the direction to go, but despite all of that, God's still right there, and He's got a hold of my right hand, and it's going to be okay.
We're going to talk more about that in a moment. We're going to take a quick break. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
There is a place where a total stranger will give you their blood. There is a place where someone you never knew will save your child from drowning. A place where people from 7 states away will turn up at your door and give you food and shelter after a flood. There's a place where a person who doesn't look like you, talk like you, or dress like you will stretch out their hand and put it across your shoulders and say, everything is going to be okay. That place is called America, where we look out for each other, and it's up to us to keep it that way. When you help the American Red Cross, you help America.
What have you done for your marriage today?
I gave my wife a hug this morning. I told her I love her. Instead of sitting on the couch, I hope to clean up.
I cooked my husband's favorite breakfast.
I sent my husband a love email.
What have I done for my marriage today? It's a good question.
I gave her a call and say, thinking of her. And the kids.
I did her hair this morning. I think it looks pretty good.
We're going to the museums as a family.
What have I done for my marriage today?
I made my wife coffee and breakfast this morning.
It's going to be her birthday next week, so I've been spending time today making arrangements to make that extra special.
Oh, we're spending the day together?
I bought her an orchid.
Hassan was able to let me sleep in by taking care of him in the morning.
I read the newspaper to my wife, and it cracked her up. She's still laughing.
What have you done for your marriage today? Small changes can make a world of difference. Get started at foryourmarriage.org, a message from the Catholic Church.
Welcome back to our show. We're talking with President JimTressel from YSU. Before we took a break, you were talking and we were talking about faith and how important that element is in the life of any Christian. In your experience with the young people in your charge, whether it's at Youngstown State or back at Ohio State or in past times, what do you say to people or the young people who don't have that spark of God within them? Because I believe that everyone does, but there are people that don't believe that they do or don't live that. Is there anything that you do to try to, vitalize that or revitalize that within them?
Yeah, both here at YSU for our 15 years and then our 10 years at Ohio State, we had what we called a Wheel of Life, or at Ohio State we called it the Block O of Life. And it had 6 areas of life that we pledged to our student athletes that we would help them grow in, however they wanted to grow. We weren't going to tell them how to grow in those areas. Academics, health and fitness, football in that case, academics, caring and serving others, personal family, and spiritually. And so we always challenge them to think about what's important to them spiritually, morally, ethically. What do they value? Because we wanted to give them opportunities to grow in that area. We wanted them to know where the Newman Center was. We wanted them to know where the Protestant ministry service was. We wanted them to know where the synagogue was. We wanted them to know where the student groups were on campus that could help them grow in whatever areas. We wanted to bring in speakers. We wanted them to suggest that their pastor might be in town for one game and give an optional chapel service or whatever. And so we wanted it to be their journey, and all we said to them was we thought that those 6 areas, if they grew during their 4 years with us in those 6 areas, that would serve them well when they got into their adult life. And so what I found was that the age group that I served, college age, was very spiritually hungry group, because I think they were just starting to understand a little bit more of the seriousness of life. When you're a child and you're just trying to get from day to day or from hour to hour, and your long range goal is Friday, as opposed to maybe your job prospects. When you're in college, you start to get just a little bit more reflective, a little bit more serious, start to think a little bit more deeply. And I thought it was a great time to help people grow spiritually. You and I were talking before we went on the air that sometimes our own biblical study and fellowship and so forth, sometimes the older we are, the more it makes sense because of the context. College kids, I always felt, had a good context, and we wanted to help them.
You've been very blessed in your life, especially in the area of championships. And for those people that follow the sports field, many of them obviously rejoice with that. What in those experiences of being a champion have you learned most about yourself and about your job or career or vocation?
I think what you really learn is what's the most valuable is the process. I remember many a day sitting in the locker room after a championship game, and we were fortunate. We played in 9 national championship games. We won 5 of them, lost 4 of them, so we had plenty of both. But in all cases, kind of being a little bit melancholy, even though it might have been confetti coming down on your head an hour earlier, that, hey, that process ended. That group of people in the exact form we were in, the journey we had traveled together, would really never be together in the same way again. And then what you looked back and valued was that intimacy of the hard work together, the ups and downs, that you handled, the good feeling that, when you did the best you could, and the best ended up being from a championship standpoint. But even the years where we weren't anywhere near a championship, the thing I always valued the most was the relationships, the process of hard work, that challenge of helping young people understand the magnitude of the challenge of becoming the best you could be. And that's why it's so much fun at Youngstown State. You see 12,000 kids trying to figure life out, trying to figure out what it's going to take to reach their dreams, and who knows what the world's going to look like in 10 years, and to be prepared to handle that changing world. That process is what I've learned to value.
We've got about 3 minutes left in our middle segment. Before the taping, we also talked about how things are different nowadays. There's so many wonderful opportunities and advantages for us nowadays in comparison or in contrast to years ago, but things are different. In the journey of young people nowadays, what is so different for them that you encourage them to really be mindful of and aware of, because things are different and things are rather complex nowadays?
Probably the biggest challenge I think young people have today is that it is such a distracted world, and the fun of a process of chasing a championship or trying to make it through med school or trying to build a church, or the process, sometimes it's hard to focus on that process when you're being bombarded from so many distractions that today are so normal. And so the thing that we spend a lot of time on with our young people, and still do, is the thought of focusing on the moment of what you're engaged in, and don't allow that to go by without gaining a great deal from it. And because there's nothing, it's funny, whenever I'm with a former player or a former student, never do they talk about their championship rings or their championship games. They talk about the process. Hey, remember when you made us do this? Or remember when you got mad at us and made us write an essay about what's a friend really like? Or, whatever. That's what they gained from it. And so that's what's, we, really pray for young people today, is that this world doesn't continue to just be so distracted that they aren't going to be able to value that process.
In our next segment, our final segment, we're going to talk primarily about Youngstown State University and some of the wonderful things that are going on there. But before we do that, we're going to take another quick break. Right. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Light Moments. Here's Father Tom McSweeney.
Christian Fedorov says he's not a hero, but many people in New York think otherwise. Mr. Fedorov was at a subway station in Manhattan when he saw a young woman being attacked. The robber was trying to pull gold chains from her neck as she stood there with her child, and that's when Mr. Fedorov stepped in. The attacker then stabbed him several times and got away. And when asked if he considered himself a hero, the shy and soft-spoken college student answered, "What I did doesn't make me a hero. What I did makes me a human being." New York's subway Samaritan serves as a reminder that there's a heroic human being inside each one of us. Whether through an act of courage or an act of compassion, we become more human and more fully alive every time we live up to a higher calling.
This message from the Christophers, New York, 10017.
Whether it's passing on medicine, a blanket, or something as simple as a glass of water, that's how compassion works. And that's how Maryknoll works, hand to hand to hand. For nearly 100 years, Maryknoll's been passing on your help to the priests and brothers working in 26 countries around the world. Maryknoll, an American Catholic organization, dedicates 86 cents of every dollar donated to their programs, serving the world's poor and powerless. And that's how it works. Compassion flows from your hand to the hand of someone in need. Hand to hand to hand. That's Maryknoll.
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 That's Maryknoll. That's Maryknoll.
Welcome back to Spotlight. We're talking with President JimTressel from Youngstown State University. And President Tressel, now we want to talk primarily about YSU. It's got a rich tradition. You're certainly one of the newest parts of that tradition. Tell us, kind of in a nutshell, the goal or the charism of YSU.
You know, what really attracted me to have the passion to come back and take on a whole different role in a world that I'd never experienced was that it was so obvious to us when we were here for 15 years that Youngstown State University is really critical for this region. And people really believe that. There are some entities, institutions that are important for areas and people don't even realize it. But everyone knows, or not everyone, but many people know the relative importance of Youngstown State and what we provide for the young people that attend, for the spirit of the community, for the economic impact of the community, and for the future of the community. And so, you know, my biggest goal is to make sure that we're a great partner, that we can provide all we can provide. I think nearly 600,000 or 700,000 people utilize our campus in the course of a year, whether it be for entertainment, going to the arts, going to an athletic event, using conference areas for learning opportunities, and on and on and on. And we want to be a destination to enrich people's lives. And we also want to be a destination to help people go and reach their dreams. We want to be a destination that helps create our workforce that will attract business. We want to be here to support business. We want to be a part of the research that can maybe innovate and bring people from outside the region. And so it's really a thrill, you know, to be a part of an institution that can be such a difference maker. And just being around our faculty and staff and students and seeing what they're doing in their particular areas, we probably need to be more integrated and interdisciplinary and maybe more appreciative of one another, which is, I guess, the same in society. But, you know, it's a fun place to be, and we have a lot of opportunity.
What's the sense of collaboration or cooperation? You had mentioned the word cooperation with other entities, like maybe other educational institutions, either locally or nationally. What are those efforts that you use to try to bring groups together and institutions together that share the same goals, that can work together? Because I think in this world, it would be better if we put our resources together to meet a goal or objective.
Well, and we do a pretty good job with it, but we need to do much better, I think. We have a great relationship with the area schools. A lot of high school students take courses at YSU, and they're able to move toward their college degree when they're not even, you know, in college yet, and that's a great financial savings. A lot of interaction between the teaching staffs of the high schools and the university. We're involved right now with a big project with the Youngstown City Schools and helping the second graders get ready for the third grade reading test, which is fundamental number one if you're going to progress. We're very involved with the business community. Our small business development group is fantastic in what they do, having our students help start up businesses, help people who don't maybe have the staffs, you know, to do marketing or to do market research or to do various things. All of our colleges, whether it's our engineering or our College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences or our College of Health and Human Services with the social work networks and so forth, great collaboration, in large part because many of the people are YSU grads and they know they have resources back on campus. And so a lot of what we do is that collaboration, and I think that's why there is a general belief that YSU is a critical component, even in areas that aren't much publicized. We just had a meeting with a lot of the educational entities. We called it a Summit on Education. And we brought in Eastern Gateway leadership, our leadership, Youngstown City Schools, Mahoning County Schools, and some manufacturing companies. And we said, okay, what is it from a workforce standpoint that our whole education system needs to be able to contribute? And okay, we got to figure out who's going to do it. And we can't duplicate services because we just can't afford for everyone to do everything. And so we're rooting for the trade schools to do well, and the tech schools and the Eastern Gateways and the, you know, the primary and secondary schools. And because our task, we think, is to educate so we have a responsible citizenry, number one, and so we can compete in the marketplace, number two.
We've got about a few minutes left of our final segment. As you plan for the future, and I think like any healthy, competent institution, planning is certainly part of it, what are some of the hopes that you have for YSU and for the people in the Valley?
Well, you know, it's interesting you bring up that word planning. This past summer I went to Harvard for a new president's seminar, and so I'm a proud Harvard graduate. And but one of the great takeaways I got from one of the speakers that week was, if you don't have a great plan, your plan will become your budget. And you know how we all struggle with budgets. And all of a sudden they take charge of what we're able to do because they seem like they have a stranglehold on our capabilities. And we need to do just what you suggest, is we need to really give a lot more time and energy for a strategic plan that will meet the needs of our region, will meet the needs of the people in our region, will meet the needs of the businesses we're trying to attract, will meet the needs of beyond our immediate region, so that we can be a part of something even bigger. And really that's what we've probably spent more time on in our 9 months here so far, is making sure that we're working on the right things and getting lots of input. You know, we want everyone's opinion. But then there comes that point in time where you have to make some tough decisions, which aren't always popular. Sure. But planning is really critical.
Well, President Tressel, we certainly appreciate your time on our Spotlight show today. We thank you for your presence, not only here, but in the Mahoning Valley. You certainly have been an impact in the past. You are here in the present, and we know in the future that certainly will continue to come to beautiful things for our valley, for YSU, and for people in general. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. It's a pleasure.
And thank you for being with us. Have a good day, and God be with you.
Spotlight has been a production of CTNY, the Catholic Television Network of Youngstown. Your program host was Father James Corda.
$33 million Americans have descended into poverty. And as their futures fall, so does our nation's.